So my name's Shaun, and I am married to Lindsay. It's going to be 20 years this year. So if you are looking for grace and hard suffering, just go have a chat to my wife. She's very good at it. Olivia, my daughter, Hudson, my son, and Sophie, who's out in Kidsman at the moment. Love you to have them. So there was someone who was a little bit naughty last night, Caleb. He was supposed to be sleeping at 5 to 11, but decided to WhatsApp me last night. Anyways, he decided to share what Erin spoke at Youth on Sunday to try to give me some encouragement. So I decided to hijack actually her title on Sunday. I thought it was better than the one I had. So I was also up, by the way, being naughty. And it's called Driven by Love. I just thought it was a much better title. The title before I had that was Loving the World on Purpose, but it doesn't sound right. I was never happy with that. Driven by Love, I think that's absolutely awesome. And I want to break a little bit of a stereotype that we might have in our minds about what I'm going to be talking about today. So I just want to show you what stereotypes are like. If I had to say right now, who's the best person, who's the best, most well-groomed person in the room? We'd point to James. Straight away. We wouldn't even cross our minds. We know James is the best guy. If we had to say, who's the most spectacular, best headmaster in the whole of South Africa? Brad. I didn't even have to say it. It's so easy. If I had to say, who, sorry, I'm laughing at my own joke. Who's the best engineer in the world? It's who would, Lance, I would say, sorry, bro, Lance. Don't worry, I'm going to sort you out just now. I'm going to sort you out. I'm going to make you feel good. Who is the best preacher in the, if you just think of a preacher? Jesus. Come on, man. Yeah. That was like a double one. But who can stare fear in the face in the midst of adversity and chaos and stand in the calm and steer a ship while the waves are blowing and bashing against him? Roger. Well, the tenors, should I say. They do it together. So often we can mention phrases or things and it automatically ignites something in us. And really what I want to jump into a word which I want to hopefully change a little bit and re-get into our DNA, and that's that word mission. So as soon as I say the word mission, there's going to be a whole bunch of assumptions and things that are going to go through our mind. Firstly, it means I'm going to have to go somewhere. It means I'm going to have to go get myself uncomfortable. Maybe it means, I'm going to have to go door to door. Or maybe it means in my workplace, they're going to ask me to just stand up and preach the gospel at my board meeting and whatever it might be. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that might come in you. For some, it's come on, baby, mission time. Let's get that tent up. Let's stand up there and let's preach the gospel. Wow, wow, wow. There's all these different assumptions. Or it means let's go to the end of the world. Or for some people, it means apostolic adventure, which means going to the Eiffel Tower, staring at it, saying hi to a couple of people. It's all sorts of ideas around it, but I really trust that today God would re-season that word, reshape that word, so it can become part of our DNA on a daily basis again. That when we think of the word mission, it's no longer something out there, but it's something that is a part of us. It's something God's called us to. It's something that we live on a daily basis that we don't have to even think about anymore. It's not something that drives fear or, no, it's not me. And what I want to quote mission in is what I believe is the most important word in Scripture. In essence, this is who God is, and that's love. If we can take the lens of our love for Him and our love for people, and we can place that lens over mission, it'll look totally different and revolutionize the way we live our lives. So I'm going to tell a story now. And it's, if you guys know me, I like to tell stories. If you are worried about scriptures and stuff, I promise you there's lots of it. I can forward you the notes. But I'm going to tell a little parable that I made up. And Lynn said, please don't go too long. I will not go too long. And it starts with a guy named David. Okay, so David, he was over in the UK. He was actually brought up in the foster care system. And he was super lucky that Youth for Christ got a hold of him at a young age and used to go to their camps. And he got born again at a young age, baptized, and just totally fell in love with Jesus. And straight after that, after schooling, he didn't even go study. He went to Bible school, and he was just so in love and on fire for Jesus that all he wanted to do was contribute and show other people this love that he had found. And anyway, so his life went on, and he would go out into the streets of London, and he would find people that were walking around that were lost or looked lost, and he would go and engage with them and chat to them and share the heart of Christ. Only thing is, he was terrible at it. Just through all his ministry, 5 years or 6 years, not one person ever gave their heart to Jesus. It was just, but he did anyway. He just loved it. He loved giving of himself in the city. Before David, a couple years before that, there was a young girl named Sarah. And she grew up in this wonderful town called Hillcrest, in a wonderful church. Her dad was actually the lead pastor of that church. She was an only child. And she was just such a delight to the community as well. Wherever she walked, she had this glow about herself. We should walk and people just say, oh, Sarah, and they want to have a chat with her and ask her questions because she was such a delight. She was witty, she was clever, she was beautiful. Anyway, she grew up and at the age of 16, she got baptized by her dad at church. It was just the most amazing thing. But unfortunately, her life just took a terrible turn at the age of 16. Her dad was out one night driving and got taken out by another car and unfortunately passed away. So it was Sarah and her mom left. And the next 2 years were traumatic for her because she had no means the mom was struggling to get her through school. The finances weren't great. Unfortunately, the dad had no life cover and there was just nothing. And they was just living off one salary. The community got round them and helped them wherever they could, but times were tough. Sarah's dreams of going to study at UCT were shattered. And so she decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the UK and I'm going to go get a job there. I'm going to get some money and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to complete my studies. So Sarah popped on a flight, left her mom and went to the UK. She didn't have any friends or family there. She just rocked up one day. And anyway, she got a job at one of the local bars there. It was a very lively bar. And she was one of the waitresses. But Sarah had grown up to this beautiful woman. And while she was there serving, she always used to get hit on by these guys. And she just absolutely loved it. It spoke into her self-esteem and she really enjoyed it. And eventually she found the guy that she thought, this is the guy. And a couple months went by and unfortunately she lost. I've got to be careful what I say this. She lost her virginity for the first time. And I remember as she was there, she felt the shame of that because growing up, this wasn't the thing to do. This isn't what should happen. But for her, love was blind. She couldn't see this guy and the faults in him or whatever it was. She never had a community around her to help her. And anyways, this guy next minute left her. And she was left a little bit broken, but picked herself back up and carried on. And anyways, one guy turned into another guy, into another guy, into another guy. And it just carried on to the point where she was so broken and lonely inside. She had lost touch with her family back home and she started drinking. So part of her being in the bar, being in that environment, she just started becoming like that environment. Anyways, one night she had been out with her friends and she was drinking and she was just totally lonely and broken inside. And she walked outside the bar and obviously very tipsy or slightly drunk. And while she was out there, a guy approached her. And it was a preacher. Anyways, the preacher came and he was like, hey, you know what? If you don't turn your way around, you're going to go to hell. And anyway, she was like, oh, even that, geez, there's absolutely no hope for me. If I don't turn, how am I going to turn my ways? I don't even know how to start changing where I'm at. I'm so far down this rabbit hole. Anyways, the preacher a bit more. Eventually, she got a little bit irritated with him and pushed him off. And as he was walking off, he turned around and looked at her and says, you're going to go to hell one day, baby. And carried on his way. Anyways, her heart was just totally broken by that guy. While she was sitting there, another guy walked up to her, second guy, and good-looking guy. But he just had these really, really cold eyes. And he walked up to her and he grabbed her by the wrist like this. He's like, hey, are you okay, my baby? Do you want to come home with me? I can look after you. I can see you a little bit. Anyway, she knew straight away what his intentions were. She could feel it. She could smell it on him. And she was just totally repulsed, pushed him away, got her hand free. Anyway, she was now in tears, sitting there in tears. And anyways, down walks this guy, and his name's David. And he walks up to her, and he just sees this girl lost. And his heart breaks for her. And he walks up to her, and he says, "Hey, are you okay, my girl? What's your name?" "Hey, your name's Sarah." He says, "Hey," introduces himself and says, are you okay?" And she says, "No, she's not okay." She could see in his eyes just this beautiful warmth and kindness. And she just broke down. For the first time in a long time, she actually felt safe with this guy. And he started to speak. She said, no, he just loved on her. And he said, "You know what? Where are you staying?" She said, "You know what? I actually haven't paid rent. I don't know where I'm going. I'm at the end of myself." He says, "Don't worry, come." And he takes her to his house. He gives her his place to stay. And so time goes on, and she starts spending time with David, and David just gives her time to restore. And he starts to speak to her about this love that he has for Jesus inside of him, as she opens her heart to him, and how it's so easily accessible for her. It starts to bring back flashback memories of when she was younger, and her father, and the stories that her dad used to tell her. And all of a sudden, there's this healing that starts to happen inside of her. So much so that one day she's sitting down, and she can almost smell the samosas of Durban as David's talking and looking in her eyes. And David gets on one knee and he proposes to her, and he asks her for her hand in marriage. And she says yes to this guy. Excited, they fly back to South Africa, and their whole life has changed. They decide to stay, and they start a youth ministry and impact young people's lives over and over again. 3 different people, 3 different approaches. In Luke chapter 10, verse 30 to 36. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers. They beat him up, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him for half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was and saw him. He had compassion. When he went to him, he bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him." And so the story goes. My friends, in that situation, who has the greater testimony? Where does the power come from in these stories? One guy can stand up and preach the gospel, and if you don't repent, you're going to hell. You can be a priest standing up on Sunday, praying and doing all the right things. But on a day-to-day basis, when we see something a little bit that is uncomfortable or difficult or is going to cost me, we can walk to the other side. So easy to do that. But the beauty of these parables and these stories is in the lover. Because that lover represents the heart of Jesus, who is the ultimate lover, who sent his son as a sacrifice to die for you and me. Where every other God required a sacrifice from us, we must give up, we must kill, we must sacrifice our sons so that the rain will come. But the Lord of Lords, the God of God, sent his one and only Son to earth to die on behalf of us as the sacrifice. Love in its pure form. And in both these stories, we see that. It's not about how clever we preach. It's not about the words we bring, but it's about the love we carry inside of us. And so often we think when we're going on mission, we just get back to that word. Oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? How am I going to preach? Blah, blah, blah. And we get caught up in that stuff. No. I promise you, if you just see someone that is hurting and you love on them, that will be the best thing ever. I promise you. And I've seen it over and over and over again. I watched it with Livy. Before we were here, there was a young girl in Mozambique, and she did like massage therapy on the beach. And she befriended her, and they used to chat and chat and chat. Eventually, she invited her to our meeting that we had in the marketplace, that some of you are going to get to experience, and the lady got saved. Livia was like, what? I invited her and she got saved. Absolutely. Why did she come? Because she felt something of love. She didn't have to preach a word. She didn't have to tell a story. But yet her heart was changed. Matthew chapter 22, verse 36 to 40. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. I love that. It's like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the law of the prophets. Take all the 10 commandments. Just do those two things. And you tell me if you can break them. You cannot. You cannot break any law if you just obey those two commandments. Loving him and loving people that are around us. It's so easy. It's so simple. If we can just get those two things right. When I was younger, I know, God captured me and I loved him. And a lot of my early years, if I'm honest, I wanted to prove myself to the people around me. It's like, and I'd do things and I'd preach this and I'd do that and I wanted to do this and I wanted to plant 1,000 churches and That's why I say long suffering. Well done, babes. A lot of it was to prove. But what I've realized over time, the most beautiful thing is when you sit in front of someone who needs love and you show them love. Because that opens the door to salvation. Because we reveal the heart of a Father, God who is love. Skipping a bunch. I want to get to some stuff. In Acts chapter 1, verse 8, we see Jesus instruct the disciples say, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the very ends of the earth. And I love that. His love wasn't just meant for me. His love collapses into the second commandment, which is love your neighbor, which means I start loving on people. As I start loving on people, that love goes from this little bubble and it rubs off onto my bubble wife. And then my kids feel it and my kids get to learn what love is like. But I wanted to start. So first of all, mission starts here at home. What is home? Well, I'll define it as the people that are like us, people that are close to us, the people that we see on a day-to-day basis, at our workplace, the coffee shop that we stop off in the morning, every single morning, and the people we bump into there. I would say that's our neighbors. That's our first call that I believe God calls us to preach the gospel. And for many years, you might have thought like, oh, Flip, I'm going to have to sit here and tell this guy radically about Jesus. And I come up with this like salvation message in my mind, and you need to put up your hand. And if you don't put up your hand, then, and we get confused and all that stuff. So we get fearful. So we just never say anything. But the most amazing weapon and it's not a weapon, the most beautiful thing that we carry is his love. In those places, if we can just be the most lovey people, I can't word it, lovey. We can be the most lovey-dovey people. I promise you we will change that area. I'll tell a little story. So, a little funny thing. I'm a TikTok influencer. Did you know that? I'm a fishing TikTok influencer. Anyways, so on Monday mornings, I do lives on my fishing ski. I got my fishing ski lives and people come on and we chat and I fish and I catch fish, put them in the boats and all that sort of stuff. It's very exciting. If you haven't watched it, you must watch it. It's great. Anyways, one of Hudson's friends, he watches my lives while he's getting ready for school. He watches live and he tells Hudson if I caught a fish or not when he gets to school. Anyways, Livy then invites me, so it's a little bit of a family effort here. Livy then invites me to come speak at SCA, which is like the Christians at school. So I'm like, okay, cool. What on earth am I going to say to these guys? I feel like the gap is so big these days. But yes, babes, I will come speak at SCA with you. No problem. She puts posters up and all sorts. Anyways, we get to the room and did you invite him, Hudson? Or not? That one. Oh, did you invite him? Okay. So anyways, Olivia invites his boy. He's been watching my lives. It's actually Hudson's friend. And he comes to the meeting. Little did I know there's another friend of his it's actually very funny. I've got to tell you, when he walks up to me, he's like this high, and he's got glasses, and he walks up to me, and he looks at me, and he's like, I follow your fishing corner. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. It's lekker, man. You watch my videos. Nice. Anyways, he was unimpacted by the message totally. He just was into the fishing. But the other boy, I just told some stories about Mozambique and the story of how we got there and a little bit about mission and how God captured me as a young boy and how much I love Jesus. And it must be real. Like, honestly, you can't fake love. It's real. And as I did that, something sparked inside of his heart. Next piece of the puzzle, Hudson invites him to youth. So Hudson's like, hey, do you want to come to youth? Anyway, the guy says, yeah, I'll come to youth. So he comes to youth. That night, Hudson is on the floor, rolling, gets into my car, ha, 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 laughing. Thanks, Caleb and Aaron. It's awesome. But he comes to that, and he gives his life to Jesus. Amazing. So at that talk, I promise you, I laid how much I love Jesus, and I did not even give an opportunity for anyone to raise their hands or ABC prayers, nothing. I just left it. It's like, if you want to chat to anyone, chat to Livy afterwards. And that was sort of how I left it. And I love that scripture after, I think you made reference to it when Peter's preaching in front of the 3,000, or maybe there were more than 3,000 because 3,000 got added. Maybe they all got saved, who knows? But as he's preaching, I love the response. What must we do to be saved? It's like there's this hunger that's birthed. Like, what do we do to get what you've got? And I promise you, when we display love in our communities, people respond to that. What must I do? You want to come to youth? Yeah, I want to come to youth. I want to know more about what's happening here. And he comes to youth and he just sees something so radically different to what his mind has ever conceived. All of a sudden, boom, gets saved. Week after that, youngster, other one, little one that looked up to me. I go to his party that Hudson went to. Anyways, again, he's right in front of me looking up at me. I'm like, hey, how's it, buddy? How you doing, man? And he's like, hey, I just want to tell you, I had a spiritual awakening on Friday. I was like, spiritual awakening? What's that, bud? What do you mean? He's like, no, I had a spiritual awakening. He didn't even have the language yet to describe what he was feeling inside. So simple, friends. Mission is not something that we have to try to or go for if we just love people on purpose. Is there any mathematicians in the room here? Who's good at maths? I'm going to give you a sum. You're going to shout it out just now. But you're going to work it out while I talk. Lance, okay. You're the engineer, bud. Come on. You are the legend engineer of South Africa. Okay. We got a pool of 100,000 Christians. All those 100,000 get one person saved every year. Only one a year. How long till the whole world is saved? Okay, there's your problem. We'll talk just now. We'll talk just now. Okay, so that was that one. Okay, so that's our local. And really what I want to bring again is I'm going back to that lens of love. If we bring that over our environment, we walk, it's easy. Instead of being like those guys that walk to the left and to the right, when we see people in our area that are hurting, that are broken, that have something, let's investigate. Let's ask the questions. Let's find out how they're doing. When we hear about a divorce, when we hear about an affair, when we hear about something in our community, let's not keep quiet. Let's love on them. Let's not judge them. Let's not be like that preacher, like flip. No, I'm not going to say that, yeah, but yeah, sort yourself out. Thank you. I like that much better than what I was going to say. Babes, I caught myself. She's proud of me, I can see. Okay, so Samaria and the outer regions. What are we doing in our community? How are we impacting just down the road? And that means slightly different language, maybe not the culture we grew up in, maybe something totally different. How are we, as either this community, how am I as an individual, because I love my Father so much, I'm just looking for every opportunity where I can love on something. Whether it's a pregnancy crisis, whatever it is, how am I impacting my outer surroundings other than just my little world that I live in? So I live in this world and that's easy. That's my day-to-day stuff. But in my heart, I've got a plan to see the world changed which means I need to step outside of that circle into the next circle, which is next to me. And that's Samaria. Did I say that right? Samaria. I did. I said it wrong in the car just now. And I had this little story. I mean, it's this little stupid thing I did during COVID lockdown. When everyone was doing those garden runs? So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to use this for something. Come on, Lord. I'm going to run for 24 hours in my garden, nonstop. I hadn't really trained for it, but anyways, that's another story. I had the best trail in my garden, I promise you. But I got through like about 144 Ks. I live streamed the whole thing, all for the Hope for the Heart Pregnancy Crisis Center. Ladies who have, girls that have fallen pregnant outside of wedlock. It's a very awkward one. How do they deal with it? But they've kept their children. Now they need some sort of support. Those are generally people in our society that sometimes are shunned, sometimes are pushed aside. It's a difficult space to be in. Even in a non-Christian type environment or non-religious type environments, it's quite a hard thing. So I was like, that's the one. And we raised some money for them. But you know what? It's, again, love. How can I love on a community? For that was finances. Just something I can do. And I love how Paul, he just goes from place to place, and we read through it in Acts chapter 13 and 14. He's like boldly expressing his hardships. My friends, it's not easy to love. It's not easy to go into a community where we actually don't quite know the culture, where sometimes we get it wrong. And sometimes people get angry with us and upset with how we say things or what we say. But we go in there and we intentionally learn how to be different. It's hard. Sometimes you might get beaten or shipwrecked. That could be fun, maybe not. I'm not going to go into too much of that. And we talk about the ends of the earth. What's our global mission? And this might be a bit more scary and bring back those old thoughts, and maybe this is where our minds are locked in what mission is. But I promise you now, if we love here, and we love next door to us, and we push into God's heart, I promise you, all we can see is people. Every tribe, every nation will worship. How can I be a part of every tribe, every nation, worshiping the one who I love? Matthew chapter 28. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. All nations. I had this most beautiful story of when I went to India with Sid and Trace Jolson, who are, I think you guys know them well, from Freedom House up in Belito. And it was a good couple of years ago. We went up to India to a place called Missouri in the mountains. Stunning, absolutely stunning. And we go to this one meeting. I was naughty, I'm still naughty. But we go to this one meeting, and it's a ladies' meeting, sort of like an undercover meeting. So they've got like this training school, which is a computer training school for women, but it's actually a mission base where they preach the gospel to ladies. So I go alongside with him, and he preaches to all the ladies, and next minute it's like, let's get healing's on, baby. Sid, it's amped. We're going to heal now. Hey, there's lines of ladies, and hey, praying. Eventually I'm noticing, because I'm looking around, what's going on here? And these ladies are looping around, like just for more prayer. Looping, desperate for prayer. I'm like, I'm out of this, baby. I walk out the door. I'm like, I'm going to go see what I can see outside. Beautiful surroundings. Anyways, there's this old guy for some reason that's sitting there. But I think they said he was about 96 or 97 years old. Old guy sitting there. I remember something just in my heart. And I went and I sat down and spoke to him, and somehow he was able to actually communicate with me and shared the gospel with him, and he gave his heart to Jesus. I promise you, that for me was the most beautiful moment of my life, watching a 90-something-year-old man sit there and receive the Father who I love. To be able to have his eyes opened at a women's meeting, this old man was able to experience the love of Jesus. So even when we're naughty, God, if we carry his love, will use us wherever we go. And just a couple practical. So we're going up to Tofu, Mozambique on the 27th, to a place that I think I've been working there for close to 20 years. And my kids have had the privilege of coming with me on many trips. I'm so keen for this team to come and experience something of what's been happening up there. But we're going into the poorest of poor places, just to love on some folk, just to show them that there's some people from South Africa that are willing to spend a whole bunch of money to come here, to sit in a room and sweat a little bit and have some choir singing and for us to love on each other and build together. Go back to the same place over and over. So I know that guy's name. So I know his kids' names. So I know his family. So I can walk alongside him, ask him questions how his kids are doing. How can I love someone if I don't know him? Or get time to know him? Okay, we're going to wrap it up soon. Practical applications in love and mission. And the first most important thing is prayer. When we connect, what I mean is talking with God. When I talk about prayer, it's communing, spending time with him, knowing him, letting him know us. The more time we spend with him, the more we are convinced about how much he loves people. We don't need convincing. Just spend time in prayer. But also what it does, as we spend time in prayer, God just shows us. He shows us faces sometimes. He shows us people across the room that might need a little touch or a little love. He shows us opportunities, like next door the house, birthed in prayer. It's like, hey, let's get behind this thing. Like, this is beautiful. Second is service. What does that mean? I tell you what, I'm a bit of a wacky guy. Some people, when I'd get up to preach, some of the people would be, oh, my word, not him again. I'm a bit wacky, But the one place you'll find some wacky people is at church. Am I right or am I wrong? Am I right or am I right, shall I say? You just got to look around there. We are so different, friends. We are so different. This is such a perfect environment for us to learn how to love. In community is where we learn to love. It's where that guy that just irritates the living daylights out of you, he is going to speak to you today. God's going to put him in his path over and over again until you learn what love is. But it's a perfect environment. If we would just open our hearts up to Jesus to say, you know what, God, I'm in this community here. How can I just love on my mate here? How can I love on someone I don't know? When a message goes out about someone that you might not know, something's happened, how can I just love on them? God, what do you want me to do? Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's like just drive over there, give them a meal, whatever it might be. How can I be a man of love in this space that I am? I promise you, that's why God has put us in community. I'm convinced of it. And then thirdly, I just want to talk about global engagement. How am I engaging with God's mission in the world? And it might look very different for everyone else. For me, it's looked like going to Mozambique and spending money and time investing in a community that I can get nothing ever back from. What is it that you in your heart, that God's placed in your heart, that you are contributing to? You don't have to go to overseas. We've got this lady who used to be in our church. Her name was Ziggy. And it's such a beautiful story. She's an elderly lady, and she never felt safe to go and whatever. But from the first day we went, every single trip that I ever went on, she either bought a bag of Bibles, she bought materials, she always sent stuff up with us. Every single trip. And it was the biggest privilege of my life this year when she went on a trip to Mozambique with her daughter. And just totally blown away, and her heart transformed. And just all the years of her giving into this space, that she could now see the faces of the people she's been giving Bibles. She could see the community of hundreds of Bibles that she had given into that community by herself. What a legend. In conclusion, the great commanding thing in our lives needs to be love. Like that story relating back to Sarah. It wasn't the preacher with the clever words. It wasn't the sly guy with the smooth guy. It was the guy that carried love, that at the end of the day gave her a space to feel comfortable enough to share her story. If we can be those people of love in this community, mission isn't a thing we have to do or go to or be a part of anymore. Mission is who we are as individuals because we carry the love of the Father. And I felt that there were some lies that maybe some of us have carried in our minds when it comes to mission that I feel like, where's our lioness, was shouting earlier. The chain breakers here. And this comes with wisdom, because some people we offer help to, and everyone offers help to, but they don't respond to it. I'm not talking about just finding any person and just like, what I'm talking about is let's respond to the heart of God. It's about we are prophetic people. We hear, we spend time in His presence, and we see someone and our hearts are stirred. Hey, I've got to do something here. I've got to put a hand out here. And the lie is that people are too far gone. There's no ways. I promise you, Sarah in that story was too far gone. That guy on the side of the road who was almost dead was too far gone. But it took someone carrying the love of the Father to bring her home. I'm not an evangelist. Well, here's news for you. You don't have to be an evangelist. What's our number? Do we have our number there? How many years? 16 years. If we had a base of 100,000 or 1,000? What was it, 100,000? If we had a base of 100,000 people and we just once a year, just one person a year we focused on, and we loved on them, and we loved on them, and we loved on them, and we loved on them until their hearts finally responded and opened up to the Father in heaven. I promise you, 16 years in this world will be transformed. Love God, love people. You don't have to be an evangelist. You just have to be a lovey-dovey person. I've been on mission before and it looks like tourism. Maybe you're old school like me. Some of our trips was apostolic tourism. I promise you, there's a different way coming. All we have to do is love on a community and a space. I don't know how to start, and I'm afraid of what people might say. That's cool. I'm afraid. Every time I approach someone that I don't know, I'm afraid. But one thing I know I'm good at is loving. And if I can just do that, if I can just reach out into someone's heart, I know that young boy, I don't know what's going to become of his life. Those young two boys. And it just took a family loving and giving our love to a community to see someone and something transformed.